Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Connection Project with me, Sally. I am so excited about this new venture of mine. And I am here today talking all things connection with a mentor of mine. I probably doesn't even know that, a spiritual guide who introduced me to so many of ways that I started to learn to connect back to myself, Angell Deer. And I'm going to tell you, welcome, Angell. And before we get into it, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Angell because he has a long list of what he's about and accomplished. Angell is a mystic, medicine man, teacher, permaculturist, beekeeper, international speaker, and lover of all forms of life. He's dedicated his life to remembering, learning, and teaching ancient wisdom through the lineages of Andean cosmology and the Norse shamanism. His passion is to weave words and stories, people and places, darkness and light, wounds and love, ancient and modern times. I love all that. The duality of all of that, what he does, just resonates. Deeply committed to the healing of this world, he is heartbrokenly inspired by our shared humanity. He likes to dwell in the adventurous space of not knowing, learning from his elders the mystery and magic of creation, in the never-ending inquiry into spiritual way of life. He is often found on his land, the sanctuary, out in the Catskills of New York, in awe of the mycelial mystic connections of life, tending to the trees and the animals and praying for a world where relationships, community, and deep care for life is a reality. Angell is trained as a veterinarian medicine man, breathwork practitioner, Reiki master, meditation teacher, herbalist, beekeeper, and more. He's an ordained minister and a licensed wellness professional. He's the founder of the New York Bee Sanctuary, a national nonprofit advocating for the preservation of bees and pollinators. He was an advisor for 5 years to the United Nations Population Fund. He has spoken in front of global audiences at the French Davos Forum, the French Embassy in New York, as the nominee for Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young at Harvard Business School, Parsons School of Design in New York City, awarded the New York City Venture Fellow for Best Entrepreneur in New York City by Mayor Bloomberg, and was recognized as Earth Rock Star in the 2022 at the Global Concert for Earth, which I did see. The sanctuary is a shamanic healing center located in Calhoun, New York, on 7 acres of land of the sacred white deer. This land is a safe haven for animals, plants, bees, and people. It is certified as Bee Safe for New York Bee Sanctuary, pollinator-friendly wildlife refuge, and a monarch butterfly station. Whew, that is a mouthful. And I just want
I
to
feel exhausted
introduce,
just listening to it.
and I am so excited. He probably doesn't know how excited I am to introduce Angell Deer, a spiritual mentor of mine. So welcome, Angell. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you. So blessed to be with you, Sally. And congratulations, by the way, on your starting your podcast.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes today, in all honesty. But yeah, connection, it's something that I have really thought a lot about and has impacted me. And so when I was thinking about a podcast and having my voice heard, connection really kept coming to me in spirit and meditation. And so sometimes I wax and wane on things, but this was like a full kind of hell yes for me. And so I'm hoping that all the people that I intuitively want to speak to can really share their messages and how important connection is. And so just a little bit for the listeners on how I met Angell. Part of my whole premise behind this, and you'll hear it in the first episode, but technology and the physical connection, like there's a duality there with technology and how we connect. We're connecting today on Zoom. I found you on the internet. I connected with so many amazing people via technology. But yet I find that I had a lot of disconnection to myself in my own healing journey. And a lot of my clients, I think, suffer and have this like yearning for connection, physical connection, emotional connection, spiritual connection. And so how do we live with both, right? Where we don't have it unbalanced, or however we want to say that. And so how I ended up meeting Angell was I was feeling disconnected. I'm a nurse. I am no longer in corporate or at the hospital, but I've stepped away and taken a more holistic approach to things. But I was feeling disconnected, having panic attacks, having all these things, and I had a yearning around plant medicine. And so I was kind of exploring that. And then I found Angel and I wanted to do Reiki. And so I did a 9-month course at the sanctuary and online, a mixture, which is perfect, a mixture of technology and in person we were. And I got my shamanic Reiki master, which was an amazing experience. And through that, I also then traveled to Peru with Angel. And that was a whole nother story for probably another podcast about connection. But so those are my experiences. And through Angel, I am connected still to people in that 9-month shamanic journey. I have sisters that I call the shamamas that we met at that time, and we are still connected with each other. And so Angel really brought a piece of the world that I wasn't aware of and allowed me to look inside through energy work, through shamanic work, and connect back to myself. I'm not fixed or whatever we want to say, healed. It's not linear. It's a journey that I'm still on. But I actually reached out to Angel because of his amazing blogs, and I follow his teachings. And he had a blog the other day that really resonated with me on how I saw it was about connection, was really about struggling in the beginning sometimes as an entrepreneur, or when you're trying to have your authentic voice heard, and who you think is going to support you, and then who ends up being the person you're really supposed to be speaking to, can be very different. And as we struggle with that, and as we come into ourselves and allow our authentic voice really to be heard, and who needs to hear it energetically will eventually hear it. And so that's the abridged version, but check out his blogs on the sanctuary, because really, really amazing. So that touched me, and I reached out to Angel. So that's my long version. And really, I wanted to just talk to Angel about everything connection and what it means to him. So thank you.
Thank you, Sally. So good to be with you, to be connected that way. It's a really good question, but for me, it has everything to do with presence in the body, with a somatic experience of connection. And I think that's the beginning and ending point for me. So it doesn't, to take your example, it doesn't really matter if it's happening here on the computer today or in person, because we can be on the computer and really fully present in our bodies, calm, center, grounded. I think there's other elements to that connection, and I will probably talk about it. And we could be in person and not be there, be a million miles away. So often I think, it's been one of my biggest discovery through various experiences of life, and also training I've done, is to realize that for a big part of my life where I thought I was really present, I was not, because I was in my head and I was rushing. And in fact, if I really sit for a minute with my mind, I realized my mind was very much in the past, thinking about what happened and thinking about not this moment, but other moments. My mind was very much in the future, worrying, anxious about what might happen tomorrow. And my body was not there. I think my body is there when I'm walking around in the street, but maybe my body is living in a different timeline because of trauma, because of things that happened to me. If I'm thinking of what happened 10 years ago, my body is there too. So this process of reconnecting or being connected for me come with that presence. And the thing that opens it, that reveals it, is slowing down. And we're in a society that is all about speed and constant action, and not very much about slowness and being. In fact, I will go even further than that. I think that anything that's seen as being instead of doing is very harshly criticized in our society as unproductive, as useless. There's a deep connection to feminine and masculine archetype, issues that we have in our world too. And maybe we can talk more about that. But I would say listening, slowing down, feeling into the body, that's good foundation for connection.
I love that. Yeah, I'm just kind of like taking that in. That's where my pause is. A couple of things that you said, the slowing down, the hustle society, the masculine versus the feminine, and how it's looked at, right? There's a couple things I want to dig into there. As when my trauma started to, and I'm pretty vulnerable about my story, but my trauma started to kind of really come up. I was not connected to my body. I didn't even know that I was disconnected from my body at that point. Didn't even know what that was. And when I started to reconnect, boy, that's a tornado and a half of having, I don't know, what do I call it? Like the tar pits start to bubble up. So there's a lot of muck and you're starting to connect, and like you have to kind of go through it. And to slow down, I took a leave of absence from work. And I'm not blaming the employer. I'm just saying this is what we're talking about, right? So I had worked probably 50, 60 hours a week for many, many, many years, definitely towards the end when I was in leadership. And I started to have like old trauma come up. And why did it decide to come up? Well, basically my body, I believe, said, I've had enough. And so if you're not going to slow down, we're going to show you how that's going to happen for you. And it came out and manifested as panic attacks, severe depression, panic attacks. And I ended up taking a leave of absence. And yeah, that was not, I had at that point maybe given 27 years to the same company, but that was not looked at. That wasn't like, wow, she needs a break. That was like, wow, what's wrong with her? And, I ended up going back after that, and it ended up finally leaving because for me, I had to start to listen to that piece, what was not my mind, but my body telling me, you can't go like this anymore. And that manifested also as pain, different things, inflammation, fatigue, all these things that you want to just have go away, but they don't until you start to really face them, and get connected to your body and what it's saying to you. And we don't live in a culture where it's really accepted. It's looked at like a weakness to take
Well,
time
it's also,
to slow
yeah, and I
down,
think,
be
as you
present.
mentioned, right, if we slow down, we're going to feel more.
Yeah.
But feeling more, if you don't have the tools to feel more,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have practices, rituals, elders, space holding, community, you can't,
Right.
because you will collapse, right? You will go into spaces that can be very scary. And I think we don't slow down, not just because that's the speed of the world. We don't slow down because we have a deep knowing, a deep wisdom that subconsciously, if we were to slow down, we will experience more. I mean, a body that's constantly in fight and flight response, which is pretty much the general state of most of the bodies in our communities and in our world.
Mm-hmm.
The fight and flight response is designed for, running away from things or fighting things. It's a threat that is present, and we react to the threat. And it's a bit like your, fire alarm is going in your house, and you have to do something about it immediately, right? You will think later on why there was a fire and what you could have done. But basically, our bodies are in constant mode of fire alarm, which is an alert that was designed in our bodies for imminent danger and threat for a very short period of time, right? If I don't know, a wild animal were running at you or something really big was happening, it was not a system designed to be constantly running off. I always tell my client what's going on in you right now. It's very much like you have a fire alarm that's running 24/7. So what do you do when a fire alarm runs in your house 24/7? You cover your ears, you run out, but you don't address it because it's just too much.
Okay.
So there's a real problem here when we see the consequence that it has on our capacity to be really present. Right? And so it's like this dance. We need to acquire tools. We need to have healthy communities. We need to have elders, guides, leaders that are able to be in that state. And to be honest, when you look at what we call leadership in our world, it's very often people that lives in very dysregulated bodies that carry a tremendous amount of trauma that is unhealed. And so the example we have and what we value, you know, from the celebrity culture to our politics and everything, it's very much people that speak really fast, that are always on the move, that are always doing, that are very reactive, that have a lot of, you know, angers and things like that. And passion is great, but anger is something else.
Right.
So I think it's hard if we don't have that example. And I think, you know, that's where we live on. That's what you experience. And that's what is, you know, very present for us everywhere, all the time. And so
Yeah.
the great question is, how do we create, nurture spaces that open connection, that allow connection, that allow slowing down, that allow emotions, that allow witnessing without shame and judgment. And that is a pretty tender process. You know, I'm writing a small guidebook on creating sacred space at the moment, you know, and I was like, yeah, we can create all the sacred space we want, but those are a reflection of our inner state. So as I create a sacred space for myself out there, I need to create the sacred space inside and vice versa. But I'm not disconnected from the collective. And so how do I do that in a world where the sacred is very often destroyed, starting by the wild spaces of the earth, waters, forest? How do we do that when native people and people that hold this tradition of being present and connected are constantly under attack, are always, you know, in places of suffering? So, you know, it's an individual work, but we have to always remember that it is also connected to the collective and it's informed by the collective. So it's challenging, to say the least, to bring those spaces inside our bodies and for our bodies to feel safe in the context we're in.
Yeah, it's interesting when you bring up the word safety because I personally did not even know that I felt unsafe in my body. And so many of
Mhm.
my clients, especially now that I'm doing more somatic work, more breath work, bringing that piece, much stronger piece into my to my clients. I mean, everybody can't go at the same pace. Everybody is not ready to have this transformation that is going to be like, 0 to 1,000. I didn't understand what that meant. It's not if like ask my client, do you feel safe in your body? They're like, yeah, I feel safe, but they may not feel safe. They may not even know it's so deep. And so creating those environments like you're talking about in communities and creating safety for women, for men. It seems like a lot of times we concentrate on women. I have a lot of women clients, but I also know, having two sons, that that is an underserved population for getting inside and looking internally, and creating that connection and that safety within, and giving people the tools. Something you said before about, we see this situation that's occurring in the world, but we can identify. But if people don't have the tools, if people aren't open to the tools, if we don't present the tools in a way that people can somewhat digest them, or they're ready, um, yeah, it's problematic, right? Because all this trauma comes up, and then it's just, like for me in the beginning, it was talk therapy. And talk therapy is fine, but it was only gonna take me so far. Like, there
Mhm.
was stuff deep inside of me that I'm still working through, and I'm fine with saying that because I'm in a different place with my journey. But people in the beginning, we need to give them these tools and create safety for them. And, maybe Susie's gonna needs to go this slow, and Mary is a little bit farther along on her journey, and what is the safety in her body, and her even just connecting to that, or him connecting to that. So I think there's so much work. I feel you've been doing this way longer than me, but I do feel like that more people are coming out, and I think there is more awareness, but also making sure that we're doing it safely. And one thing you hit on was communities, because there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of stuff, right? And so, especially coming from a healthcare background, so I like decipher, because I was doing a lot of this stuff. I just didn't have a name for it, which is kind of crazy as a nurse for almost 30 years, that I wasn't taught certain, ways of connecting with someone's energy, and connecting to their bodies. I was doing it, but I didn't really know what I was doing in that sense. That sounds kind of crazy,
Mhm.
but if you can understand what I'm saying. And so how do we create this communities? Because in the past, like a lot of the work you do, um, people may not know this about you, but you've traveled, you left corporate, you you traveled for a while, you are very involved in communities, creating your own community at the sanctuary, which is beautiful. And there's not a lot of that now, right? Where we have the elders that are showing us or guiding us, or um we don't have the leadership, like you said, that is, I'm not even blaming anybody, because it's like their journey of where they're at. And so how do we then create that, for people, that we have safety when we're bringing all these new coaches and healers, and there's a lot of people, and then you have to decipher that too, also, like
Mhm.
who you're feeling safe with. um
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in that answer. I mean, for me, what's very important is, and that's come, out of my long spiritual practice and walking with the land and walking with elders. Um, I think there are different foundation to that, right? It's not just one thing that's going to solve everything. We need to put many pieces of that puzzle in place to start seeing the picture. Um, but I think first, if we agree with, and maybe some people disagree with, probably not the people listening today, but we need to say, okay, we don't really have a good embodied, healthy, spiritual, connected leadership in our lives. Maybe we didn't have it in our families. Maybe we don't have it, on our community level, locally, nationally. We don't really witness it on TV or on social media most of the time. So we need to connect to the people that have been holding those teachings and those lineages, elders. I feel very blessed to have many elders in my life that are coming from different tradition, Native American, South American. and others that have been able to hold that space for me. That when something happened, like the war going on in the Middle East right now, instead of immediately reacting and having an opinion and deciding, my reflex is to connect to my elders and say, what do you see? What is happening? So we're not entangled. Like we say, you know, you don't want to see the tree, you want to see the forest. You want to access what we call the view of the eagle. You want to take some altitude and see a little bit beyond what you think is happening. And so that goes for things that are happening in the collective that I just mentioned, but that goes also for our own processes, right? Our own pain, our own troubles. So it's turning towards those that have a GPS that is working, good roadmap, that I've seen that before, that I've more experience than I do, than we do. Then I think, and for me, it's been also key, is having a daily practice that connect to this compass, this GPS, which are rituals, ceremonies, prayer practices, what we call in ancient cosmology the ancient instructions that are embedded into nature, into every part of nature, that created this earth, that created this body. It doesn't matter if you're spiritual or not, we can recognize how extraordinary life is, and something quite potent, powerful, and wise created this. And I'm not saying about a guy sitting in the sky, but the general force,
Right.
the general wisdom that is carried through that process of creation. And every shamanic practices, it doesn't matter where it's from, including ancient shamanic practices from Europe, where most of the people in the US are coming from. There was shamanic practices, there was what we call witches and wizards, people that knew, that were different, that were still connected. And we need to bring that into our lives every day. Because if I spend my day listening to TV and social media and watching the world as it unfolds, I'm going to be informed by that and believe that is the way. But if I have another perspective, I'm not saying it's better, by the way, then I can decide for myself, when I already see both and study both, which one seems to be more liberating, which one seems to be bringing more healing. You know, I always tell people I don't believe in spirituality or in shamanism or in this tradition. I know them because I experience them, and I make a choice that this is the way I want to walk my life, because I feel it made me a better human being. It helped me with my trauma. It helped me, you know, with my relationships. So yes, first we compare, you know, don't take anything I say for truth. And if you see that maybe a different type of wisdom brings you more peace and ease and joy and love and, you know, connection in your life, then go for that. So we need the elder, we need the practice, and then I think ultimately we need a connection to the land. You know, I always tell people, I think what saved me was moving here upstate and having a daily connection to a land that I take care of. Not just walking, you know, in nature because it's beautiful, not just taking from nature when I need, but giving to nature. So learning service, learning devotion, learning being in relation to something that is bigger than me, that is going to be there when I'm gone, that transcend my sense of self. And nature caretaking, land caretaking, growing your own food, even just planting a tree, can give immense wisdom and reconnect us to the self. When you do all that, or part of it, or some of it, community will appear. The new community. People that also feel that there is too much suffering in their life, in the community, in the world, that are looking for different answers. People that maybe have some similar dream and vision of how we could relate, how we could connect with each other. We can't, I think that was one of my mistakes 20 years ago on the side that past, thinking that, oh, I'm going to go and change the world. Because there are billions of us, and there are many more forces that are even unseen that are running this world. But what we can do is take care of the self, right? Change the self, inquire into the self. And this is in every spiritual tradition. It's in everyone that studied psychotherapy, Jungian psychotherapy, say, know the self, go inside. Right? That is the answer. So it's not a Native American or South American teaching. It's a humanity teaching. It's something that is present in Western culture too, even if it's not always really valued or embodied or promoted as the way. So there are, I think, those three foundation: elders, connection, personal practice, and connection to land or devotion or service into something bigger than ourselves. Once you start doing that, something will shift. Maybe, it will take a year or 10, but you will start walking into a different direction.
I 100% agree. My shifts started to come when and so for the audience, I think the takeaway here is what you said, right? You have to go inward to that self-connection, get some tools, find a person you trust. And the daily practices for me started my shift. I was so disconnected in my daily practices. And then when I came and did, learning Reiki and the pieces of the shamanic world and connecting more to nature. I mean, it's not like rocket science, right? When you think about it, but it is really the basics, like getting out and grounding, stepping onto the land, being in service to others, but not only being in service to the land or others, being in service to yourself, pausing, creating community, and something you said about doing it yourself, and then the community will come. Like for one of us to go out and do it all, it's not going to happen. But if in pockets, and it isn't, sometimes I'll hear, people are of different religions and whatever, but I feel pretty faith-based. Like you said, it doesn't matter whether it's Native American or, finding something that feels good for you and creating that practice. Stop, pausing, going inward. For me, meditation, breath work, connecting more to my body, finding someone that you feel comfortable with to guide you if you don't know the tools. Because just like anything, we need a guide sometimes. Doesn't mean we need a guru, but we just need a guide to help us along to kind of what we know, but we need tools, right? We get a map to find our way. When I had to come to you, I had to look on MapQuest to find my way from Utica, New York to the Catskills, right? So in my journey, I've needed different guides along my way because I need to have tools for my toolbox. But I agree with everything you said on how we can start, because if someone's listening, how do they start to become more connected? And I think everything you said is spot on. It is how I experienced it, and it is important for you to experience it yourself. There can be many tools, but if meditation, I have a lot of clients that just cannot seem to pause and meditate. And that's what I love about breath, because I call it a little bit of a bait and switch sometimes, because they think they're not going to meditate, but they concentrate because they're a doer on the breath. And then they start to drop in. And then they're able to kind of slow down and tap in. Because I have some clients that just are, resistant around the slowing. It's hard for them to do that. Maybe it feels unsafe. Um, so there are so many different modalities, right, that we can step into and help people, teach people, and see what feels good in their body, because it may not be that sitting for a meditation feels good to some people. The breath feels better for them to slow down. I mean, what do you
Yeah, and
think about that?
well, I think there is, obviously we're in a very individualistic society, right? That's pretty obvious. I don't think I need to elaborate on that. But I think what has invaded the spiritual space, at least the modern spiritual space, is also that very individualistic narrative. Very often I read and I see people say, well, you are your own medicine, you are your own guru, you are your own healer. And there's truth to that. In fact, the book I'm writing, my book is going to publish in spring, is called Becoming the Medicine. How do we do that? How do we become that medicine? But I think it's also coming from a very colonial capitalistic point of view of spirituality, that this idea that we are separated from a system, that we can do it all alone because that's
Mhm.
how you do it. Work hard and you'll be successful, right? It avoid responsibility of the collective. It avoid also the reality, which is we are in interconnection to everything else. I'm only alive right now, not just because I know how to breathe and my body knows how to beat my heart, but because there is trees and skies and rivers and plants and soil that are doing tremendous amount of work so I can be alive.
Right.
So this idea of individual healing, of self-mastery without the others, is very violent and very untrue.
Mhm.
Taking the example of meditation, yes, obviously you can practice meditation with an app, which by the way means you're not alone because someone made the app, someone recorded the song, someone recorded the voice guidance. So you're not doing it alone. You can do it without an app and without any music and just with your breath. But even doing it just with your breath, you're in communication with trees and with the air and that. I could go on and on with that.
Mhm.
But the reality is, when I started, that was my first, um, gateway or bridge into spirituality, was to study meditation for over 10 years. And I became a meditation teacher. I think I only mastered it because I had an incredible teacher. And she's, almost 90 years old now and still teaching yoga and meditation and ancient Hindu scriptures at Advaita Vedanta, which are amazing scriptures. But the fact that I would go every week to the studio, sit with her and sit with a community of practitioners, is what not only kept my practice alive, my commitment, my accountability, but also made me learn
Right.
meditation. And yes, I could say, well, I could have done it on my own, but I don't think I would have gone as far without that community, without the teachings, without the teacher, until I could really do it on my own. And still today, we're talking 20 plus years later, I don't live in New York City, but if I was there, I would probably go to the studio to meditate once a week with her, because there's a different experience when we're doing it together.
A
So I
hundred
think
percent.
it's really important to stop thinking that we can do everything on our own, because it comes from this profound lie that we are alone when we're not, that we are separated when we're not. And if, yes, on one side of the coin, it is true that we carry all the wisdom we need inside of us, and I truly believe that nobody needs someone to teach them something. The opposite is also true. In order for that wisdom to be revealed, in order to evolve, we need extraordinary teachers, we need guides. And I will never be where I am today without my teachers that have been here since the beginning of my path and still here to this day. I'm still a student on this path, and there's not a week that path without me being in connection to my elders and my teachers. And that's, I think, a sign of humbleness. We need to be humble in that path, and we need to recognize that we need support, we need guidance, and like you said, finding the people that resonate with us, that are doing the work, that embody the practice, and what it is that every person has to find out what it is for themselves. Right. I also work with my local pastor, which I really love. You know, I go to mass sometime on the Sunday, and people are like, "What? You're going to mass?" People are very surprised. I say, "Yeah, because I found value in some of those teachings. I also find community. It keeps me connected to my local community. For me, church is not just a certain way of praying. It's also meeting people that I will not meet if I don't go to church." So there are many ways, but I think it's important that we diversify and increase the amount of interaction with different kind of wisdom that have proven over thousands of years to help people.
I love that.
If we were born, right, if I was born in the forest, in the Amazon, in a community that literally from the time I'm conceived, not even coming out of the belly, everything is in alignment and everything is supporting that, I would probably not have needed that many teachers, and still I would have some. The plant teacher, the animal teacher, the land teachers, and the medicine men and women in that community who will be always in service of my higher self, of my purpose, of my life. So we are so far from such life that we need to reinforce even more that connection and look for it and ask for it.
I love that. And I feel that that is so true. And that's kind of why I mentioned that, because I think sometimes, because again, it's a great way to kind of sum it up. Again, technology and what we're going to do, like, how can we live? Because yes, we want to be introspective and be able to rely on ourselves, but we need others. Like, I would have never been where I am on my own spiritual healing journey from my trauma, from my life path, without mentors, guides, teachers. And I know that that is my path. Like, it's not going to be like in a year, I'm not going to need anybody. And it's not like a codependency. It's more like I have so much to learn. And sometimes it's helpful, sometimes just to have that, like we talked about, that perspective. Sometimes I am so in it in my journey that I have trouble having that eagle's view, right? I have trouble stepping out of my own body and having that view. So sometimes I need one of my helpers or mentors or guides, whoever I'm working with at that time, to step out, just like I do for my clients. Sometimes it's hard for them to hold their vision because they're in it. So as I hold a vision for them and I give them perspective, I don't tell them what to do. I'm giving them that perspective of how they need, just another viewpoint. I don't want to say that I'm telling them, because I'm not. I'm really giving them that perspective. I'm able to zoom out. I'm able to fly above. And then I just think it's so important, because yes, there are a million apps. Yes, it's helpful. But for me personally, if I'm deep in it, breathing with an app isn't helpful. I really need someone to breathe me. Like, that's just me. And that's what I've learned about myself. I can drop into meditation really well now, and I can feel the change in my body when I'm in it, when I'm grounded, when I'm in my channel. But that didn't happen overnight, and that didn't happen on my own. I needed teachers to work with me. I needed a little accountability. I needed to work with different mantras, what felt good for me, what was going to work for me in my body and where I was on my journey. So I really do think, as for the listeners, that's like beautiful advice. And how we can come back and connect with ourselves, but also we need others, right? Like, we need others, we need nature. Like, this is interconnected. I had a moment, I was in an advanced breathwork energy healing seminar week in San Diego this summer, and there was some amazing energy healers there. And I obviously do the Reiki and I feel a lot, but they had us connect to like really the web, I guess, right? And we did this experience and I was like, oh my God, like how we can feel. Like I know when I perform breath work in person, even online, I can feel it. But when I am in a room of say 15 people, I feel something I don't know if I've ever felt before, honestly. I can
Mm.
feel the energy of their hearts and I can feel the energy when I breathe together with them. Because I think one of my gifts is feeling. So that is almost like a cell phone being charged in for me. I just leave refreshed, even if
Mhm.
I'm the facilitator. But we all have to find our own stuff. So I believe, along with you, that we do have our own medicine, but there is no way personally that I could have tapped into that on my own. And I'm still tapping into it, right? Like this isn't an end game, I think, in this game of connection and awareness and healing. Um,
And we're not on our own. We are with
right.
our ancestors. We are with the great cosmic forces. When I'm teaching a class, I just started a 5-week class and on alchemy and metamorphosis because it's something that inspired me and Marita, whom I'm teaching with. But as I was teaching the class a few days ago, streams of consciousness, ideas, visions were coming. And I usually teach people under me with my eyes closed. I just go in and I speak from that place because I try to stay connected to something else. And I know I'm just a vessel and I'm weaving with it. So part of it, yeah, it might be something that's already in my conscious mind that I've heard before or that I believe in. But I always feel like a huge part of what comes through when we are connected, when we are in our bodies, when we are calm, when we are relaxed, there is a flow that comes through, like when we write, that is coming from other places. There's literally teachings that comes out that I usually don't remember what I just said, so I have to listen to the recording after. And I was like, wow, that was great. Not you were great, Angel, for things that I was like, wow, that thing that came through me was really wise. And I always thanks at the end of my teaching the things I've seen or not seen, whatever was talking through me. No, my teacher Rudrani, who I mentioned earlier, who taught me Advaita Vedanta, and she's an incredible yoga teacher in New York City. She was saying that she studied in India, and she was saying that her guru at the time would never sit in his chair. So there was this big room with all the students and the chair there. He would always sit at the front of the chair at the bottom on the ground because that was a remembering for himself that someone else was teaching behind.
I love that.
He wanted his students to have that experience. And when he would stand up or arrive, he would bow to that chair. And you can say it's the higher self, you can say it's God, you can say it was his own guru that he studied with, but it was a reverence to all of that, to his ancestors, to the yoga scriptures. It's always recognizing that there is that is there. And when we are alone and we're thinking we're doing it on our own, in fact, we are not.
Right.
But if we're entangled in the mind, if we're constantly stressed, we disconnect completely from that source. We're really disconnected from this power of creation, from that higher wisdom. And so we just need to create the condition for that if we're doing it alone. And usually when we're doing it in a group with a teacher, with other people, the condition are kind of set up, right? A bit more. And I think that's why also make it, more potent because we are all doing it together. And there's a power in the collective. We always stronger when we do things together.
Yes, I believe that so much. And I do think, for me, I was very tangled in my mind and a very heavy negative mind coming into my healing journey, and it still resonates. But I can same thing when I'm either, a guest on a podcast or when I'm teaching, and I close my eyes a lot too. And so when I'm in like my center, my place, my voice is different. I don't even know, I may listen back to and say, wow, that was pretty profound, but I know that is like from another place. And so I agree 100%. And when I started to get more into my body, having more faith that there is something bigger than me, doesn't matter, like you said, whatever you want to believe that is, because it can be different things for different people, and just being open to that, and just allowing that to flow. Because again, I feel the same way. I am just a vessel. And once I get to this place where I want to be able to let my voice be heard, but it isn't really all what I want to say. It is what I want to say, but it's also what I want to bring forward for other people to be able to, listen, if nobody today on this podcast has a daily practice, doesn't want to do, that's fine. If one person today listens to what we were talking about and starts a daily practice or finds a guide or knows that they're not alone in the sense of this disconnection versus connection, and how it can be just going out to the trees. My granddaughters, they're all under the age of 8, and they're hugging the trees and talking to the fairies. And so when they come here, it's like they're playing the singing bowls, like everything is at there, and I don't squash the magic.
Mm.
Like they come back and tell me what the tree said. And so I did not learn like that or grow up like that. So trying to impart that on them and allowing them to enjoy the magic that's all around us that sometimes we just don't see because we're not pausing or connecting. And so hopefully their journey will be a little bit different than mine.
Yeah, we just have to nurture it because it's there for children. And
Mhm.
by the way, there's a lot of modern scientific research on the massive benefit for children to be connected to nature, to have outdoor education, to storytelling, to cultivating that sense of wonder and magic. It makes children much more social, much more connected, less angry, and all the pathology that we are seeing now, which are very worrying for young children and young teens, with ADHD and plenty of other disorder, without even talking to the rate of suicide, which are growing like so rapidly with young kids. All those things are very reduced, if not completely absent, in child school systems that have those kind of education. So there is a massive benefit to it, and I'm really glad to see more and more research and science, coming into it. It's something my elders always tell me about, that it's like common knowledge. It's basic sanity and
Right.
healthy ways of being for many people in the world. And by the way, that is the way we lived uh, until probably the generation of my grandparents. My grandparents had a food garden, and they had their spiritual practice, and they were connected to their ancestors, and there was nothing weird about it. There was nothing like being on the edge of society, and we only recently lost most of that.
Mhm.
Not everywhere in the
Mhm.
world. In fact, the majority of the planet still live that way, a great majority. um, so it's something that, yeah, is common sense if we tap into the old knowledge that we carry and what we deeply need. I believe, we are, like you said, belonging, connecting species. We're a social species. We're not the lone wolf in the forest. That's not who we are. That's never how we evolved. That's not who we're meant to be. And that's going to scream inside of us until we allow it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Angel. So for telling our guests, community connection practices, morning practices. So tell us a little bit. I thank you so much for being with me. I took a lot of your time today, and I appreciate that. There's so much to dig into around these subjects, and your wisdom is really magical and beautiful and has definitely impacted me. And we don't always know even how we impact people, because people cross our paths and so many people cross your paths, but there is impact there. And what you're doing is really, really magical. And that is the reason that we all need mentors and guides as we start on these journeys of connection and healing. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you for the
And
opportunity.
do you just want to share a little bit for our audience how they can find you and all your magical things that you provide? Because you're doing a lot these days.
Well, they can, go on my website, the sanctuaryheal.com. They can find links for my blog, my podcast, and YouTube channel. I have a lot of interviews of elders. I also write a lot, at least, couple, 2-3 times a week. I publish a piece because I feel like if I had full-time writing, I could write a piece 5 times a day. I have a few small guide online that people can download. I have a book coming up probably in January or February. It's almost there. And I have a lot of online offerings. My community is online. My community, people come here sometimes, but majority of my community is online. And there's a lot of events. We have a gathering for the solstice. We have, online gathering for breath work, for wisdom sharing and connection. So yeah, you're not alone. So, if you resonate, come and connect. If you don't, find someone else. But there's a lot of things available out there. And yeah, I hope that today at least one seed was planted somewhere in your heart and you feel like you want to nurture it.
Thank you so much. I can say that Angel's teachings and what he has to offer, I've done many different things, and it really is, if it resonates at all, check him out. You will not be sorry. He also takes people to Peru, and that's amazing, a whole nother podcast. But yeah, so just check out his website and his offerings. Thank you so much, Angel, for being here with me today and being my first guest. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sally, and much blessing and long life to your podcast.
Thank you.